How resoling works. Basically, shoes come into the shop and we inspect the shoes for damage and or worn areas, and then we base our repair decisions on those factors. Here are some of those factors. Okay, so here I have a TC Pro, which is a full sole shoe. This one I've inspected and I've deemed that there's no need for a rand, but there is a need for a half sole. And a half sole repair traditionally is from the front of the arch forward to the toes. So I'm gonna mark that with a marker. And that mark is going to be my grind line on the machine when I start removing the sole. This is the new pad of rubber that will be added to the shoe. So this is the other TC in a pair. The other one did not need a rand replacement, but this one does. A traditional toe cap basically replaces just the worn area of the shoe. It's really invasive to remove this rubber in this area, so a lot of care has to be taken. But once the rubber's been removed and the new rubber goes back on, it should be as good as new, or as close to new as we can get it. So here we have a Squama. This one does not need a toe cap, it just needs a new sole. The Squama, much like the Solution, the Testarossa, the Kataki, the Otaki, are all referred to as half sole shoes, or split sole shoes. The sole only covers the forefoot. The arch and the heel are completely different pieces and don't have to be replaced. So in order to remove this sole, we're going to apply heat, enough heat to break down the glue bond between the sole, the P3 and the rand layer, and we'll be able to peel it right off, put the new one on. So next up is an approach shoe. This is the TX2 Evo Leather. This shoe is really cool because it's the first approach shoe that La Sportiva has made available the original sole for us repair centers to use. It reduces waste and it really speeds up the resoling process. So what La Sportiva is doing with all these spare parts is really, really cool. This shoe also doesn't need a rand repair, but it does need a resole. The toe has been worn so much that it's about to impact the rand. It hasn't yet. Now's the prime time to resole. This sole will also be heat released, meaning we apply a certain amount of heat to the sole to break down the glue bonds, and then we can peel it right off, prep the new pieces, put it back together. Voila, brand new shoe. Okay, next up is the Nepal Cube GTX, a general mountaineering boot and an ice climbing boot. Rubber sole, polyurethane, and TPU midsole. This boot, luckily, only needs a resole. The crampon points have not been affected, haven't been worn, so they don't have to be replaced, and the rand is still in really good shape, which is killer. This is going to be a relatively quick and easy resole, and it's not very invasive. But unlike the other shoes, a majority of this midsole, this red area, is going to have to be cut off. If it's ground off, it produces a ton of particulates in the air. It's not very healthy, so we're going to cut this off as much as we can to minimize the amount of grinding that's going to have to happen. When this is removed and prepped, the new sole and midsole will be applied. Simple as that. All right, just for clarification, there's basically two different sole types when it comes to climbing shoes. One is the full sole. You can see this blue sole goes all the way from the toes to the heel. That is referred to as a full sole shoe. This is what we refer to as a split sole shoe. This is the Squama again. So from the tip just to the start of the arch basically is where the sole lies. There's no midsole that has to be replaced on this half sole or split sole shoe. This is what makes La Sportiva pretty much ahead of everybody else, is they offer us authorized repair centers the original factory spare parts to put on these shoes. So the finished product is as close to out of the box or off the shelf at a retail shop as you can get. Each individual piece is going to be cleaned so they're free of debris, so we get a good glue bond. Basically, after inspection and repairs are marked, then we prep each shoe, we remove the soles, we clean the parts that were just torn apart, and we prep them for gluing. And that involves using cleaners, compressed air, wire brushes, things like that to get rid of any type of debris that might otherwise negatively affect the gluing process. After that's done, then we tape off the shoes so we don't over glue. Then we go to the glue tent. And then we do the assembly. After the assembly, we do the final grind to bring the shoe back to factory finish. What you would expect the shoe to look like off the shelf. That's the goal, at least. One of the coolest things that La Sportiva does to support the repair industry is to provide us authorized repair centers with the tools and materials that we need to do a good job. Our goal is to produce results that are as close to factory as possible. And Sportiva makes that possible by providing original spare parts, which speed up the resoling process, and they're the original factory parts. So the shoe returns to you as close to as new as possible. Highest quality resole you can get, basically. This is a Nepal sole and midsole here. That's gonna go on the boot that we're gonna repair in a little bit. This one here is the sole and polyurethane midsole layer from a TX2 Evo, shoes that I'm wearing right now. This sole is for a downturned shoe. Obviously it's a full sole. This sole fits really well on most of Sportiva's downturned full sole shoes. Another really cool example is the Theory sole. You can see the authorized spare part stamp. It is a legitimate part from the factory. I've tried making these by hand out of a full sheet of rubber, and they're really difficult to do. This saves a ton of time and makes for a better looking, better performing finished product. Another one's the Squama. You can try to do these by hand, and if you do them enough, you get good results. It's a pain, so we use these. After a shoe comes in the shop and I inspect it for what repairs I deem necessary, the shoe is outfitted with a last or a foot form. Here I have a small selection of foot forms for a variety of different shoe models. The foot form is what the shoe is originally built around. It is incredibly important for getting the best results possible to have the appropriate last for whatever shoe you're working on. Could I use this in a TC Pro? I could. TC Pro is not going to perform the same. This is a neutral last. This is for shoes like the Finale, the TC Pro, the original Katana Lace, all sorts of different shoes. Here we've got a slightly bigger last. This is for an approach shoe. Today, specifically, I'm gonna be using it on the TX2 Evo. Pretty much every different model of La Sportiva shoe or boot has a different last or a different shape to it. This particular one is for an approach shoe. And this one here is a mountain boot last. Again, I can't stress how important it is to have this type of equipment to do a proper job repairing shoes. If a certain resole shop or cobbler shop doesn't utilize a certain brand's proprietary foot forms, there's a really high risk that the shoe will come back in a different shape and will perform completely differently than how it was when it was new. So it's really important to have an appropriate last. The most important thing when you're sending your shoes off to get resoled, in my opinion, is to ensure that the resole shop has the appropriate foot forms to rebuild your shoe. If they don't use the appropriate foot forms, then your shoe might come back in a different shape and won't perform the same. These things are clutch. Really important if you care about performance and look and feel of your shoe.